have an active shooter. We have an active shooter inside the warehouse.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 1693 means we got shots fired 4:15 at Route 291. Sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
Good evening, I'm Joe Holden. A total of 12 people were shot during a competition, which was being live streamed from a Jacksonville mall. Eyewitness News reporter Anita O is live in the SAT Center with more on the investigation and what we're learning about the suspected gunman. Anita.
Joe, good evening. That live stream actually caught horrifying audio of those gunshots being fired in rapid succession. This all happened, as you mentioned, during a popular gaming tournament in Florida, and the suspected shooter is actually well known in the gaming community. The Buffalo Bills had even recognized him for winning a regional tournament back in 2017. Authorities believe he's 24-year-old Baltimore, Maryland. He allegedly shot a dozen people, killing 2 of them, and then turned the gun on himself.
Some active shooters have no obvious motive, no indication they are going to commit mass murder. Some weird, off people never do anything bad, while the quietest, nicest person you know could be the worst kind of monster imaginable. Tragically, there are people who are capable of killing innocent people for no reason. Those same people seem to get a disturbing kind of thrill when instilling so much panic and fear among hundreds, sometimes thousands, of innocent and unsuspecting people. No place is exempt from this kind of violence anymore. Not shopping malls, movie theaters, restaurants, places of employment, entertainment venues, and worse, schools are a frequent target of this misplaced hate and evil. While we can never expect it, we can be prepared. There are many shootings that the public never hears about, mostly because the victims, witnesses, and first responders were trained and ready. It's a sick, sad, and unfortunate reality. There are predicting factors we can't ignore, and there are mental health issues our society must address. Today's case covers a 24-year-old man who was in town for an EA Sports Madden NFL gaming tournament and committed multiple murders. The loss of even one life to gun violence is one too many.
Active Shooter the podcast is a High Five Holly production, and I'm your host, JT. If you've listened to our prior episodes, you know that the Active Shooter podcast team has taken the no notoriety pledge, and we will not be sharing the real name of the shooters that we cover. We will be giving the shooters a pseudonym and refer to them by that name throughout the episode. This will help in clearing up any confusion in the story, while remaining true to our pledge in not naming the shooter by their actual name. In today's episode, we will refer to the shooter
as Max. Monday, August 26th, 2019, was a typical hot and humid summer day in Jacksonville, Florida, yet the patrons inside the Good Luck Have Fun game bar were having a great time, fully immersed in an NFL Madden video game tournament. The bar, located inside the Chicago Plaza, was closed to the general public, allowing the space to host 130 to 150 participants and onlookers for the gaming event. It was an overwhelming amount of people for the bar, They usually saw a decent turnout for these type of events, but this one was particularly impressive. The local bar's prize was not only $5,000 in cash, but the satellite tournament was sanctioned for a nationwide EA Sports Madden NFL 19 competition that was going to occur later in Las Vegas, and would garner a $125,000 grand prize. The tournament this night was the first qualifier in the Madden 19 Classic, and the event was broadcasted on Twitch, which is a live streaming platform. It is because of these live streams that the entire shooting, at least the audio of the shooting, was captured and broadcasted for the whole world to hear.
Got a lot of good games going on.
It's a lot. It's going to be hard to get them on stream. It's not a lot.
It's not a tough out today. Excuse me, not an easy out.
The Good Luck Have Fun Game Bar is also a restaurant located in the Jacksonville Landing, which is a 2-level complex that houses about 65 stores and other full-size restaurants and entertainment establishments. The complex is a horseshoe-shaped 126,000 square foot structure, making it an extremely busy place, with people constantly coming and going. The game room inside the bar was where the actual tournament was taking place. It held flat-screen televisions that covered the wall of the game room, and the games themselves were streamed on a massive 36-foot TV. 24-year-old Max was a frequent and somewhat well-known professional gamer. Despite his status, Max was quiet and a bit peculiar, often playing through tournaments with a blank stare on his face. If he was displeased or delighted, one would never know. Max's face never betrayed what he was feeling on the inside. Unfortunately, at this tournament, Max's gameplay was less than stellar, and he lost enough rounds that failed to qualify for the finals. The only glimmer of fury that simmered inside Max was when he stalked past his opponent, the winner, without shaking hands or even so much as looking the other player's way. Instead, Max left the bar completely, though he wasn't done with the night. Far from it. No, Max was only just beginning. He returned a short time later wearing the Baltimore Ravens backpack he'd been wearing throughout the entire event. The only difference is that when Max returned, he was heavily armed, carrying a Springfield Armory XD Mod 2 subcompact 9mm semi-automatic pistol, worn in the waistband of his pants, and a Metro Arms Company, also known as a Mac 3011 SSDT M1911 style 45 caliber semi-automatic pistol, equipped with a laser sight. He also thought to bring plenty of spare ammunition for each gun. At approximately 1:30 p.m., surveillance footage showed Max exiting the game room. He looped around Chicago Pizza, which is a part of the Good Luck Have Fun game bar, and casually placed his sunglasses on a table, while simultaneously snagging a firearm from his backpack. Max raised the 45 caliber gun, holding the weapon with one hand while dropping the backpack to the ground. He began firing, and after a moment, Max gripped the gun with both hands and began to fire with abandon.
And he lost over a Madden game, and he came out. It was a Caucasian white dude. He was nerdy looking. They said he got mad, went into his car, and just came back and shot everybody.
People were running everywhere, running for their lives, desperate to seek shelter from this madman.
I just seen people just running out of there, screaming, pushing each other.
There was a tournament announcer who was interviewing a gamer who was shot and killed in those brief, fleeting, yet painfully long moments. Max sought his inexplicable justice on a roomful of unsuspecting individuals. A mere 20 seconds after Max began firing, he shot himself in the head, already dead as he collapsed to the ground.
We have one suspect in this case. He is deceased at the scene at this point.
He fired a total of 12 bullets that murdered 2 innocent people, and injured another 10. One person was hurt when they tried to flee the building after the shooting started.
Pop, 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 like it didn't stop, like it was just
something automatic.
Yeah, it was like an automatic or something, because all you heard was just gunshots.
I seen somebody's body on the ground. I seen a kid with blood all over his clothes, people with blood on their shoes.
The first 911 call was made at 1:34 p.m., and only 2 minutes later the initial first responders arrived on the scene. By 2:13 p.m., the SWAT team had evacuated the scene, and the Jacksonville County Sheriff's Office was advising the public to stay away from the event and scene. Local firefighters were in the area training, and several frightened victims ran to them seeking aid. The Coast Guard was also brought in to search the local waterways for evidence, as the bar was located next to the St. Johns River. The majority of the injured victims were rushed by ambulance to the hospital, while 2 others were to drive themselves.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
26-year-old professional Madden player Timothy Anselimo was known in the gaming world by the handle O'Larry. Timothy grew up in Queens, New York, playing video games nearly 20 hours a day, and the only reason his mother allowed it was because the alternative was, well, gang life or life on the streets. At least at home gaming, she knew he was safe. He was shot 3 times, yet he survived each wound. The first bullet went through his right thumb and middle finger, and the second bullet entered through the front of his chest, lodging into his body near the right armpit. Immediately, and likely operating on pure shock and adrenaline, Timothy ran towards the emergency exit, bleeding profusely. He slipped and fell, which caused him to be literally trampled by other people. Desperate to escape the enclosed quarters where they were trapped with a deranged gunman and faced near certain death, Timothy managed to scramble back to his feet when he realized he had been shot in his left hip as well. Who knows whether he would have made it on his own, or passed out from the sheer terror and pain of it all. But suddenly, Timothy was pulled out of the stampede, whisked away to the relative safety of an emergency operating room, where he immediately underwent life-saving surgery. According to some reports, his right thumb was barely hanging on, but doctors were able to repair some of it, though he only regained about 30 to 40% of his right hand. A bullet could not be removed from Timothy's chest, and remains there to this day. Timothy returned to the NBA 2K League, where he relearned to play the game on a professional level, after making some adjustments to how he holds the controller. Doctors had to use bones from a cadaver donor along with plates and screws to put the thumb back together, and there's absolutely no joint in his right thumb. He struggles with everyday things like trying to tie his shoes, buttoning shirts and pants, or zipping pants or jackets. Despite having no feeling whatsoever in his thumb, Timothy was able to return to the gaming community he so loved, though he battled with anxiety and depression along the way. But who could blame him? Doing the one thing he loved the most cost him so dearly. Yet he lived, and that comes with its own struggles for anyone who survives such a horrific event. However, Timothy has learned not to take anything in life for granted, and his family and loved ones are incredibly grateful he is alive. Another gamer, Drini Gyoka, was hit by a bullet in his thumb. He later commented that he felt lucky to be alive despite living through the worst day of his life. He realized, quote, "Life can be cut short in a second." The University of Florida treated 6 patients, and 3 people were treated at Memorial Hospital in Jacksonville. Initial breaking news reports indicated there were 4 deaths, though that was later clarified as 3 deaths, with 1 being the shooter. There were also early reports that there was a second shooter, but that was quickly disproven. Several witnesses ran and hid inside the bathrooms once they realized with utter terror that there was an active shooter. Those quick-thinking actions likely saved a number of lives. Some witnesses said later that Max was acting strangely all day, and wore the same clothing on Sunday as he wore on Saturday, and several participants indicated that Max was acting off the entire tournament, not just one of the days. He never removed his sunglasses, which seemed out of character for his usual appearance at these events. He usually wore a blank stare, but not glasses. What else was strange was his lack of interaction with a single other human being. The whole tournament. It's not clear whether there were metal detectors, guards, or any other security measures at the event. Max's car was discovered in the parking lot, at a bar, and police approached it with extreme caution, and the vehicle was ultimately cleared of containing any type of explosive device. It was determined that Max drove about 11 hours from Baltimore, Maryland to Jacksonville, where he checked into a local Motel 6, located near the Duval-Clay County line. The scene was complete chaos. People were running and screaming, some were hiding and sobbing, and the air was filled with sweat, blood, and fear. Police did their best to manage the scene and keep victims and witnesses calm, as they tried to divert them to the appropriate emergency services. SWAT teams cleared the entire center and searched for accomplices before declaring the scene safe. By the morning following the shooting, at least 5 victims were discharged from area hospitals. It should be noted that this 2-day tournament began on Saturday with pool play and proceeded into single elimination bracket on Sunday. During the course of the tournament, 2 different players beat Max. However, neither of those players were harmed. 22-year-old Elijah Clayton was known by friends and family as Eli, but in the professional gaming community, his handle was True, or True Boy. Eli attended Nestle Elementary and Portola Middle School in Tarzana, California, where he loved playing sports and studying science and math. His mother described her son as a statistical genius who began displaying his impressive aptitude, especially for computers and gaming, at a very young age. Eli first started playing Madden when he was only 6 years old, and he eventually rose through the ranks to become one of the top competitors in the country. In 2017, he was the Jacksonville Jaguars Club Championship Series representative, and he even made it to the semifinals of the 2018 Ultimate League Championship. Eli placed into 5 consecutive EA Sports Major Live events dating back to Madden 17, and placed in the top 5 in the Madden Championship Series 2017 Madden Classic Bowl and Challenge, where he also won $5,000, which was the eligible cash prize for those who finished in the top 25. The 2 previous Madden Championship Series campaigns, Eli was the 6th highest earner. In addition to his love of gaming, Eli was a dedicated student who took his work seriously while attending Chaminade Preparatory High School. Eli was a celebrated athlete, competing for 3 years in 3 sports that included basketball, football, and track and field. For his senior year, Eli transferred to Calabasas High School, where he continued to excel and thrive in the competitive sports environment, as well as his studies. Eli graduated in 2014 and went straight to Pierce College, where he graduated with an associate's degree in computer science. Eli dreamed often of a big and fulfilling career, working in the gaming and technology industry in Silicon Valley. He is survived by 9 siblings who, along with the rest of his loving friends and blended family, will miss him terribly. Taylor Robertson was born on November 26, 1990, in Bluefield, West Virginia, where he lived throughout his childhood years until he graduated from James Monroe High School in 2009. During his time in high school, Taylor was a member of the Honor Society and the FCA, as well as an outstanding athlete. He earned the first team All-State in football 2 years in a row. During his second year, Taylor also achieved the Athlete of the Year accolade. Those who knew him say that Taylor was extremely kind and humble. He was a good friend to have on your side. Though he would say, quote, he was just an average farm boy from West Virginia. Others never saw him as just basic, however. His nickname in high school was the Taylor Robertson, and he graduated in the top 5 of his graduating class. After graduating high school, he earned a bachelor's degree in accounting and landed a job as a credit analyst for First Community Bank. Taylor was extremely successful as a gamer, too, having earned over $80,000, which included his Madden NFL 17 Classic tournament win. Taylor survived by his wife Holly and little boy Reed. Only 22 years old when he was murdered, Taylor's parents were forced to bury their beloved son, who was also a brother, stepbrother, and stepson. The Jacksonville landing was opened on June 25, 1987, and was designed and built by the Rouse Company after the city of Jacksonville gave $20 million to construct the landing, as it is commonly referred to by the locals. There are more than 300 events hosted at the landing annually, including 4th of July fireworks displays, an annual Christmas tree lighting, and a New Year's Eve party. The Jacksonville Maritime Museum also used unoccupied retail space to display model ships from 1990 to 1997. The landing is shaped like a giant horseshoe that has an open courtyard stage. In 2007, a 19-foot by 15-foot jumbotron was installed in the courtyard, drawing even more shoppers and onlookers to the landing each year. The first floor of the building housed stores such as The Gap, Foot Locker, and Victoria's Secret. The second floor was mostly the food court called Founders Food Hall, and also held 18 restaurants including Chicago Pizza and the Good Luck, Have Fun game bar. The first John Madden football game series was released in 1988, and according to the research from Newzoo, the global audience for esports was approximately 380 million people, made up of about 215 occasional viewers and 165 million esports enthusiasts. The multi-billion-dollar industry is named, as one would imagine, after John Madden, who was a longtime professional football coach and sports commentator. In 2006, John Madden was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and his fame and popularity has only continued to grow over the years, thanks to the popularity of the video game, available for all video game players. The Madden game allows players to build their fantasy football rosters for different teams and play against each other online.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
active shooter, mass casualty incidents.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
Max was born on December 22, 1993, in the Baltimore area of Maryland. He attended Hammond High School, and according to court records, he also attended Glenelg Country School, although the reason and time period is unclear. Max's dad earned almost $150,000 a year as a NASA engineer, working in the instrumental electronics development branch. A brilliant man, he held a master's degree in electrical engineering. Max's grandfather, his dad's dad, also worked for NASA. Max's mom was a PhD toxicologist who worked for the United States Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, for a short period in her career. Most recently, she was employed with the Health and Human Services Department as a toxicologist, earning about $110,000 per year, and lived in Columbia, Maryland. In addition to Max, the incredibly successful couple had another son who was 2 years older than Max. Their wedding bliss didn't last long, though, and by 2007 the once happy and loving couple was entangled in a very acrimonious divorce and custody battle. Both wanted to raise their boys, particularly Max, who was diagnosed as a child with dysthymia, a chronic low-grade depression, an oppositional disorder. They constantly argued over which medications would best help their son, medications such as Prozac and Ability, and disagreed about his medical treatment and even tuition for their boy's private school. Prior to the divorce, the family lived in the King's Contrivance section of Columbia, Maryland, where the average home is valued over $500,000. For his part, Max did struggle with his mental health. Between February and May of 2009, he was sent to Utah's Red Cliff Ascent Wilderness Treatment Program for troubled teens and youth. The 15-year-old spent around 100 days at the facility. However, it seems this treatment wasn't quite enough, because Max was enrolled in at least 2 additional facilities that provide acute adolescent and psychiatric care for disruptive teens and young adults. Participants in the programs at those establishments receive hospital and home services from the Howard County, Maryland school system. One of the times Max was hospitalized was in 2007 for 12 days at the Shepherd Pratt Health System in Townsend, Maryland, which is a suburb of Baltimore. Later, he was admitted for 13 days at Potomac Ridge in Rockville. After he graduated from Hammond High School in 2011, Max was accepted into the University of Maryland, which he attended, but never earned a degree from. He majored in environmental science and technology, seeming to follow in his father's and grandfather's footsteps. At the time of the shooting, Max was not enrolled in any classes, and it is unclear when he stopped attending. Max's dad remarried after his contentious divorce and subsequent custody fight. However, his new marriage didn't last either and also ended in divorce. It was his father's home that Max claimed to be residing in around the time of the shooting. Both his dad and Dad's new girlfriend lived in the condo, which was situated in a South Baltimore Auburn called Harborview, at the 1200 block of Harbor Island Walk. One constant that seems to show up in Max's life is chaos and instability. Former neighbors of the family recall that police were summoned to the home numerous times and described the family as, quote, very, very dysfunctional. Throughout his life, Max displayed major mental health symptoms. He was prescribed several medications, including antipsychotic ones. His mother often claimed that Max was behaving desperately and on the verge of possible schizophrenic break. On the other hand, his father was of the opinion that his ex-wife was exaggerating their son's mental health issues. Indeed, divorce court filings showed that Max and his brother both suffered from serious medical problems that have resulted in an exorbitant amount of medical expenses. Still, no matter the diagnosis their child received, the pair seemed in perpetual disagreement over the severity of his mental health needs and challenges. His mother believed they weren't doing enough for their son, and his father believed they were going overboard. This statement weighs so heavily in light of the tragedy that occurred at the hands of their deeply troubled son. The couple's original divorce was confirmed in 2007, yet new and supplemental documents and motions were still being filed in court well into 2012, further evidence of how hostile each had become, mainly over their children's care, which is the one place their emotions and egos should be set aside, and a united front should be presented at all times. Documents indicated that Max's mom claimed that his dad told Max not to take his Risperdal, a drug that was prescribed to Max. His dad didn't think Max needed it because his son wasn't diagnosed as psychotic. He simply believed Max's mom had, quote, an obsession with using mental health professionals and in particular psychiatric drugs to perform the work that parents should naturally do. And while Max's dad thought his ex called the police over minuscule matters, perhaps he wasn't totally wrong. There was a time in 2010 that she called 911 saying that Max was being abusive to her. You might think he was violent by this contact. But no, the police were called because of the following reasons. Max was coming home late from visiting his dad's house, and that's when he was allegedly trying to gain control of a TV cord. Max was assaulting her by, quote, laughing and rolling his eyes. After that 911 call, Max wrote a letter to the judge saying his mother was pretty crazy and that he would rather live with his dad. He went on to claim that he hated his mother. He hated everything about her, and he hated her more than anything in the world. He continued by saying that his mom called the police on him 20 times. She regularly gets drunk, and she was the reason for his poor grades. On the other hand, there is a balance, and while Max's mom might have made emergency calls that didn't rise to the level of true emergencies, she certainly wasn't wrong about her son, and her concerns were proven to be valid, something that didn't need to happen after the fact. This isn't meant or intended to disparage Max's dad. We do not know the true or full extent of the issues this family lived with for years. Neighbors of the family say that Max's dad was a great guy, and no one ever had a problem with him. Growing up, Max played video games all the time. He bordered on obsession, playing to the extent that he refused to attend school or even bathe. It got so bad that his mom took away the gaming equipment as punishment once. Max's hygiene was so deficient that it was becoming a health concern. Yet, when the gaming equipment was gone, she would find Max awake at 3 or 4 in the morning, pacing in circles in various rooms in the house. Max's face never displayed emotion when he played. Instead, he stared attentively at the screen, and nothing else. On another occasion, when Max's mother confiscated his gaming controllers, she locked them in her closet, to which Max promptly punched a hole in the door so he could retrieve them. There were at least 2 other times when he was with his mom that she placed all of his clothing into a suitcase and asked him to leave, including once on Mother's Day in 2007. She reports that Max struggled greatly after his parents' divorce and was unable to concentrate, except when gaming. When he was upset, Max would curl up into a ball, sobbing uncontrollably as he refused to go to school. Mom was granted full custody after the divorce, and Dad had visitation rights, though it seems that Max missed most school when he was in his mother's care. His dad claimed that she continuously provided false information to mental health professionals, and even once described a time when Max was handcuffed by a police officer after he locked himself in his mom's car to avoid going to a mental health appointment. This isn't exactly evidence of poor parenting, yet Max's dad claims that his son was, quote, generally lively, communicative, and playful. All words that are the opposite of what his mother would say. The two aren't mutually exclusive.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
active mass casualty incidents.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
Between 1993 and 2009, the police were called to the home Max lived in with his mother a total of 26 times. Specifics of each call are unknown. Several could be minor incidents or nothing at all. Still, families don't have that many regular visits by the police unless there are truly some serious issues, which, more often than not, are mental health episodes. Because nothing of substance was ever done at any of the calls, Max had no criminal record, no recorded mental health reasons not to own or possess a firearm. Therefore, he was able to legally purchase his weapons from a licensed dealer in Baltimore, Maryland, on August 13, 2019. Other gamers describe Max as antisocial, soft-spoken, if he spoke at all, and he periodically had an erratic game style. Some say he always seemed a little off, but kept to himself, so he really wasn't a bother to anyone. He usually played on a PlayStation 4. Max wasn't in the gaming community to make friends, as so many are. He only wanted to play, and used several different handles when doing so. His screen names included Bread, Mr. Sliced Bread, and Ravens Champ. Bread was the name he played under the most frequently and was how he was known in the gaming community. In 2017, Max won $10,000 at a Madden tournament in Buffalo, New York. An announcer from that tournament recalled Max as being very introverted, not there to make friends at all, and it was excruciating trying to get him to talk through their interview.
Keeps to himself. He's not here to make friends, and to even get him to open up to talk to you about anything, it's like pulling teeth, man.
The win at this tournament was being called the most exciting moment in all of the 2017 NFL Club Series championships, and the official Buffalo Bills Twitter fan page even tweeted out a congratulatory tweet to Max, but he was completely nonchalant about the entire event.
He came in as a 7 seed and he just knocked off the 2 seed, and he did pretty convincingly.
Yeah, I don't think of myself as a 7 seed. I think personally I'm one of the better players, and I like to let my game prove that.
Later, also in 2017, Max played in another Madden Club Series championship in Burbank, California on April 15th. In this tournament, Max was defeated in the quarterfinals, yet appeared to take the loss in stride. Just because he was known in the gaming community doesn't mean he was revered. Quite the opposite, in fact. There were other gamers that posted on social media and other forums, both before and after the shooting, that Max had a reputation for cheating and overall dubious gameplay, even being accused of intentionally making games, quote, glitchy to work towards his advantage, and posted other strategies and tips on YouTube and other websites. In March of 2019, the Good Luck Have Fun game bar inside the Chicago Pizza closed its doors permanently. The company was behind on their rent and had been facing eviction. The restaurant and bar proprietors, along with the building owners, reached an agreement and the lease was terminated. According to building owners, the tenants were fighting to stay open before the shooting happened. On July 5th, 2019, the Jacksonville landing shuttered for good and was demolished completely. By December of 2021, the city of Jacksonville approved a $1.7 million design contract to build a park where the Jacksonville landing previously stood. Approximately 50 lawsuits were filed, including those seeking compensation for physical and emotional damages. What, if anything, could have been done to stop this tragedy? There were certainly red flags. Perhaps if there had been greater mental health intervention, this horrific event could have been stopped before it even started. We all have the unique ability to help prevent such a catastrophic event from happening. If we keep our eyes and ears open, and never hesitate to report when something, or someone, just doesn't seem right. It is our sincerest wish that there will be no more active or mass shooting stories to tell. We pray that love will prevail over hate.
Too many have died! We should say to ourselves, not one more!
In the meantime, we urge our listeners to stay aware of your surroundings and keep in touch with your loved ones. If you see something, say something. You never know how many lives you'll be saving.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Active Shooter, the podcast. Remember, if you see something, say something. There's no telling how many lives you may be saving. A huge thank you to Darren Curtis, who composed some of the music used in this episode. Check him out at darrencurtismusic.com. DARRENCURTIS music.com.
Active shooter. Reports of an active shooter.
Active shooter of mass casualty incidents.
Make sure to check us out on social media. We have a discussion group on Facebook. Just search for Active Shooter, the podcast discussion group. You can also find us on Instagram at Active the Podcast and Twitter at Podcast Active. For just $1 a month, you can get access to ad-free episodes, early release episodes when available, and a shout-out on the show. Just go to patreon.com/Active the Podcast. Thank you, and be safe.